She came marching down the dock like she owned the tide itself, arms crossed tight, lips pursed into a perfect line of disapproval, and that ever-present clipboard clutched to her chest, like it was the Constitution. Her name was Karen, but not just any Karen. No, this was Marina Karen *, a title earned through years of self-appointed rule over Dockside Harbor, a small marina that should have been a quiet slice of waterfront heaven. Instead, it had become a bureaucratic nightmare wrapped in passive-aggressive notes and hoa politics. I was down on one knee, tightening a stubborn bolt on the Salty Serpent *, my 30-year-old fishing boat that I'd bought off a buddy in Alaska. Sure, she was a little rough around the edges. The paint had faded. The deck creaked if you stepped just wrong, as she let out a low diesel groan every time she started up. But she was mine, and fixing her up had become my therapy after 10 years of chaos overseas. The boat wasn't just a hobby, it was my fresh start, my peace. But peace was never something Karen allowed for long. This has gone on long enough, she snapped, her voice slicing through the gull cries and lapping waves like an angry violin. I looked up, wiping sweat from my brow with the back of my hand. Morning to you, too. Karen ignored the greeting. You've been warned, repeatedly. This boat is an eyesore. It violates aesthetic guidelines, emits offensive fumes, and I've had *5* complaints about the noise during your so-called repairs. I blinked. Didn't realize tightening bolts was a felony. Her jaw stiffened. This is a private marina. Slip space is reserved for vessels that maintain a certain standard. Your project does not meet those standards. I stood slowly, brushing off my jeans and facing her directly. I pay my dock fee. I keep my area clean. I follow every posted rule, even the stupid ones. If someone has a problem with my boat, they can talk to me. Karen raised her chin, smug. I am the someone, as head of the Marina Beautification and Regulation Committee. I'm responsible for maintaining our standards. The committee, I later found out, was just Karen and a couple of retirees who liked free coffee and hated change. They didn't actually run the marina. That was still technically owned by old Mr. Bill Jenkins, who hadn't set foot here in years. But Karen had wormed her way into every clipboard, bulletin board, and email thread she could find. Her word had become law, mostly because no one had bothered to challenge her. Until now. I crossed my arms. You don't have the authority to tell me to move. I've filed for revocation of your docking privileges, she replied smoothly, like she'd rehearsed the line in front of a mirror. You'll be receiving an official notice within the next 48 hours. At that point, you'll have 72 hours to vacate. Failure to comply will result in towing and impound. I stared at her. You're gonna tow my boat. It's not personal, she said, in a tone that meant it absolutely was. It's about the integrity of the marina. I could feel my pulse tightening behind my ribs, not because of the threat. I knew she didn't have that kind of power, but because I was suddenly tired. Tired of people like her who made life harder for no good reason. Tired of her assuming her badge of self-importance gave her the right to push people around. But I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I smiled. Just a small one. Okay, Karen. She narrowed her eyes. That's all. That's all. Because what she didn't know was that for the past few months, while she'd been busy nitpicking wind chimes and flagpole heights, I'd been working on something else entirely. It had started with a casual conversation, me and old Bill Jenkins, the actual owner of the marina, sitting on his porch sharing a six-pack. He told me he was tired. Tired of the complaints, tired of the constant emails, tired of Karen's nonsense. He was ready to sell. Just wanted someone who'd treat the place right. I'd offered to buy. The process had taken a while, inspections, paperwork, negotiations, but we were nearing the finish line. In fact, just the day before, I'd signed the final papers. The ink was still fresh. So no, I didn't need to argue with Karen. I just needed to wait. She stalked off, mumbling something about consequences and standards and how I'd regret my attitude. I watched her go, then turned back to the Salty Serpent *. The sun had started to warm the deck, casting glitter across the water. A pair of kids were fishing at the far end of the dock, and an old man in a floppy hat waved as he motored past. In a tiny skiff, this place deserved better than her. I crouched back down and got to work, one bolt at a time, quietly preparing for the storm to pass and for the tide to turn in my favor. The morning sun spilled gold across the marina, turning the water into liquid fire. I arrived just after 6 with a coffee in one hand and a folded envelope in the other. An envelope that contained the finalized, notarized deed making me the new owner of Dockside Harbor. The ink had barely dried. It was official now, no more back and forth, no more ifs or maybes. The marina, the slips, the dock, the small office shack, the maintenance shed, the bait shop, it all belonged to me. I had barely taken a sip of coffee before I saw her. Karen. She was already out, clipboard in hand, the wind catching the edges of her floral blouse as she marched down the dock with righteous fury written all over her face. In her other hand, flapping against her thigh, was a laminated notice of removal sign that she'd apparently spent the early morning crafting. With her label maker and laminator, she didn't say a word when she got to my boat, just zip-tied the sign to my rail like she was branding cattle and stood back with a huff of satisfaction. I waited until she was done. Then I calmly reached out, unclipped the sign, folded it in half, and tossed it in my toolbox. Karen's lips thinned. "You're in violation. You've already been warned. You were supposed to vacate by yesterday. That vessel should be gone." I sipped my coffee. "Good morning to you, too. This isn't a joke." She snapped. "Security will be down here in 15 minutes to remove you. If your boat is still tied up, it will be chained and reported. Security won't be coming," I said, setting my coffee on the rail. Her face twisted in confusion. "Excuse me." I reached into my jacket pocket and unfolded the envelope. Inside was a copy of the marina deed, signed and notarized, with my name printed in bold black ink. I held it out toward her. She didn't take it right away, just stared at it like she wasn't sure if she should read it or swat it out of my hand. "As of midnight last night," I said, "I own this dock, and the surrounding slips, and the entire marina." Karen blinked once, then again. "You're joking." "I'm not." She looked down at the document, finally snatching it from my hand. Her eyes flicked over the lines, growing wider with every word. No, this has to be fake. Bill wouldn't sell to *U**. He told me he'd give me first right of refusal if he changed his mind, I said. "I made him an offer. We had a good talk. He said he wanted someone who actually gave a damn about the place, not just about keeping things pretty." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gulping air. I stepped back onto the dock and took another sip of coffee. "And now that I'm the owner, I'm reviewing all existing dock leases, starting with yours." Her voice cracked. "My slip is fully legal, except for the part where your yacht's been leaking gray water into the harbor for 3 months, and the fact that you're 2 months behind on dock fees." She gasped like I'd slapped her. That's not relevant. I've been on a payment plan." "No record of that," I said, pulling a small folder from my satchel. "I have the financial logs right here. In fact, looks like you've skipped your last TOHOA payments as well." Karen flushed deep red. You dug into my private records." "I didn't have to dig," I said. "They were in the files I now legally own." She squared her shoulders, trying to recover. "You can't just throw me out. I have rights." I nodded. "You do. You have 72 hours to bring your account current and have a professional inspect your yacht's wastewater system. If not, your slip agreement will be terminated, just like you tried to do to me." Karen's voice was shrill now. "You're doing this out of spite." I shrugged. "Nope, just enforcing the rules. You like rules, don't you?" A few of the other slip owners were starting to gather, pretending to check moorings or organize tackle boxes. While watching the drama unfold, I caught the eye of Greg, the retired firefighter from Slip 1-B, who gave me a slow, satisfied nod. He'd been on the receiving end of Karen's wrath once, over an American flag that violated color harmony standards. He looked like he was enjoying every second of this. Karen spun on her heel and stormed back up the dock, the clipboard swinging wildly as she stomped. "This isn't over," she yelled without turning. "You'll regret crossing me. Have a great day, Karen," I called after her. I spent the rest of the morning walking the docks, talking to boat owners. Most were surprised, a few were cautiously optimistic, and several openly grinned as I told them about the changes I planned to make. Updated security lighting, lower slip rental fees, and actual enforcement of all rules, not just the ones Karen liked to weaponize. The maintenance guy, Luis, found me near the bait shack. He looked both relieved and exhausted. "She used to come down here twice a week to check if the soda fridge had too many of one brand," he said. "Man, you don't even know. I'll make sure your fridge diversity remains intact," I said with a grin. By midday, I'd gotten 3 thank you notes from neighbors, actual handwritten ones, and a bottle of bourbon from old Miss Reynolds, who told me she'd been praying for Karen's humbling since 2017. I didn't even know what slip she lived in, but I thanked her anyway. Back at the Salty Serpent I opened up the hatch and sat for a while, letting the engine purr quietly beneath me. The boat felt different now, lighter, even though nothing had changed. Except everything had. The Marina was mine now. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like home. The weeks that followed were nothing short of a quiet revolution. Word spread faster than a summer squall. Dockside Harbor had a new owner, and his name wasn't Bill Jenkins. It was me, the guy with the dented boat and diesel hands. The one Karen had tried to run off the dock. That alone earned me instant legend status with the longtime residents, most of whom had suffered in silence under Karen's tyranny for years. I didn't waste time. The first thing I did was walk the entire marina, clipboard in hand, the same kind Karen used to wield like a royal scepter, but mine had actual plans on it. Real improvements. The wooden planks on Dock B were starting to rot through. I scheduled repairs. The security lights at the far end of the harbor hadn't worked into seasons. I hired an electrician. I even brought in local artists to paint a mural on the side of the old bait shack, turning it from an eyesore into something people actually stopped to admire. And the Salty Serpent she got a facelift, new paint, a quiet hybrid engine I'd been saving up for, a fresh set of flags and lines. The smell of diesel was gone, replaced by the faint scent of teak oil and the salty breeze. She sat proud at her slip now, no longer the subject of whispered complaints, but a symbol of something bigger, change. Karen, meanwhile, flailed like a fish on a hook. At first, she tried to continue her routine like nothing had changed. She marched the docks every morning, sunglasses on, clipboard at the ready. She printed flyers in her same old font, bold caps, underlined threats. But the difference now was no one listened. The first flyer was about a noise violation due to someone playing jazz music at sunset. She posted it in the laundry shack, on the bulletin board next to the welcome sign. I took it down before most people even saw it. The second was about dock chair color guidelines. I laughed when I read that one. Apparently, Karen believed only nautical whites, grays, or navy should be allowed. I replaced it with a note of my own. Bring whatever chair makes you happy. Bonus points for wild colors. That week, someone showed up with a chair shaped like a flamingo. I gave them a free month of docking. It didn't take long before Karen realized her days of authority were over. But instead of disappearing quietly, she tried a new strategy, rebranding herself as helpful. One Friday afternoon, I was loading propane tanks into the community grill by the dockside pavilion when I saw her approaching. She wore a bright sundress, carried a tray of cookies, and had a smile that looked like it had been duct-taped into place. "Afternoon," she said, her voice sugar-coated but brittle underneath. "Thought I'd bring something sweet, Build bridges." I looked at the cookies. They were oatmeal raisin, the most diplomatic of cookies. "Just boring enough to be safe. Is this a bribe or a truce?" I asked, straight-face. She forced a laugh. "Let's call it diplomacy. We've had our differences, but I think it's time to move forward together." I took one cookie and bit into it. Dry. Just like her smile, she stood there, waiting for something. Praise, a handshake, an offer of power I gave her none of it. I appreciate the gesture, I said. But I'm running things differently now. No committees, no unofficial rules, no weaponized clipboards. Her smile flickered. So there's no place for me. There's a place for everyone. Just not for the version of you that used to police flower pots and scream about bird feeders. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned and walked off, the cookie tray still half full. That was the last time I saw her. With a clipboard, after that, she kept to herself. Her once feared yacht sat parked at the far end of the dock, windows shut, blinds drawn. She still came to the occasional Marina meeting, the real ones I held every 2 weeks, but she never spoke. Just sat there, arms folded, watching her former kingdom slip through her fingers. The community, meanwhile, flourished. I hosted a BBQ on the second Saturday of the month. Just as the sun began to dip low over the water, we rolled out a couple of old smokers, threw on burgers, ribs, corn. Someone brought a portable karaoke machine. Kids danced on the docks while grown-ups passed around beers and stories. Boats bobbed gently in the background, and for once, nobody was worried about whether their deck furniture matched. Even Greg, the retired firefighter, got up and sang a pitchy but enthusiastic rendition of Sweet Caroline. People clapped along. Even Karen, watching from the edge of her deck, gave a reluctant smile. I stood there, hands in my pockets, the smell of smoke and salt in the air, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Ownership. Freedom. Not the kind you shout about or post on a billboard, the kind that settles into your bones quietly, like warm sun on your back after a long storm. There was one last moment that really sealed it for me. Late that night, after the crowd had thinned and the last of the ribs were gone, an older gentleman approached me, Mr. Alvarez. He'd lived on his sailboat for nearly a decade and barely spoke unless spoken to. He looked me in the eye and said, "You brought the heart back to this place." I didn't know what to say, just nodded and shook his hand. As I walked back to the salty serpent the moonlight dancing on the water and laughter echoing faintly down the dock, I thought about how it all started, with a laminated threat, a clipboard, and a woman who underestimated the wrong man. She demanded I move my boat. She didn't know I'd buy the dock and the marina, and with it, every last ounce of her power.